setting sun cast long shadows across the worn linoleum floors of Jefferson Elementary School as teachers shuffled into their classrooms, coffee cups steaming in the crisp October air. It was supposed to be just another ordinary Tuesday, the kind that blended seamlessly into the rhythm of autumn lessons and Halloween preparations. Mrs. Henderson, a veteran teacher with 32 years under her belt, was arranging math worksheets on her desk when the familiar crackle of the PA system filled the air. "Good morning, Jefferson Elementary," came Principal Morrison's voice, clear and professional as always. "Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance." The routine proceeded as normal: the pledge, morning announcements about the upcoming book fair, reminders about picture day. But then something strange happened. After the standard announcements concluded, the principal's voice returned, but this time it carried a different tone, almost mechanical, as if reading from a script he'd never seen before. "The following students report to the main office for attendance verification," the voice continued, though Mrs. Henderson frowned. This wasn't part of their usual morning routine. Tommy Richardson, Sarah Mills, Michael Chin, Lisa Rodriguez, and David Park. "Please report to the main office immediately." Mrs. Henderson glanced at her class roster, running her finger down the list of 24 familiar names. Tommy Richardson wasn't there. She'd been teaching 3rd grade for over a decade, and she knew every child in the building by name and face. Her heart began to race as she double-checked the list, then triple-checked it. No Tommy Richardson. No Sarah Mills either. Down the hallway, similar scenes were unfolding in every classroom. Mr. Peterson, the 4th grade teacher, was frantically flipping through his attendance sheets, his usually calm demeanor cracking as he searched for Michael Chin. The name had echoed through the PA system with such authority, such certainty, that he'd automatically assumed the boy must be in another class. But as he mentally ran through every face he'd seen that morning, every backpack hanging in the hallways, every voice chattering about weekend adventures, Michael Chin simply didn't exist. The confusion spread like wildfire through the school's corridors. Teachers stepped out of their classrooms, whispering urgently to one another. "Do you have a Tommy Richardson? What about Sarah Mills? Has anyone seen these children?" The questions bounced off the walls like echoes in a cave, each one met with the same bewildered head shakes and concerned frowns. Mrs. Rodriguez, the school secretary, was already fielding calls from confused teachers when Principal Morrison himself appeared at her desk, his face pale and drawn. "Margaret," he said quietly, "I need you to run a complete search of our student database. Every grade, every class, going back to the beginning of the school year." His voice carried an edge of panic that she'd never heard before in all her 15 years of working beside him. "Of course, Mr. Morrison," she replied, her fingers already dancing across the keyboard. "What name should I search for?" "Tommy Richardson, Sarah Mills, Michael Chin, Lisa Rodriguez, and David Park," he recited, his voice barely above a whisper. As the words left his lips, his face grew even paler. "Margaret, I need you to understand something. I didn't make those announcements." The secretary's fingers froze above the keyboard. "What do you mean?" "I mean I never called those names over the PA system. I finished the regular announcements about 10 minutes ago and came straight to my office. I never mentioned any students reporting for attendance verification." His hands were shaking slightly as he reached for his coffee mug, taking a sip of the now-cold liquid. "But I heard my own voice making those announcements. It was definitely my voice." Margaret's search confirmed what they both feared. No students by those names existed in their current enrollment. Not in kindergarten, not in 5th grade, not anywhere in between. She expanded her search to include the entire district database, thinking perhaps there had been some mix-up with student transfers or new enrollments. Still nothing. The mystery deepened as the days passed. Every morning at exactly 8:47 a.m., just after the regular announcements concluded, the same 5 names would echo through the halls of Jefferson Elementary. Always the same voice, Principal Morrison's voice, calling for students who didn't exist. Always the same mechanical tone, as if the words were being read from an invisible teleprompter. And always the same confused scramble as teachers checked and rechecked their rosters, searched empty hallways, and came up empty-handed. By the end of the first week, the phenomenon had begun to take its toll on the entire school community. Children as young as 5 were asking their teachers about the invisible kids whose names were called every morning. Some of the more sensitive students claimed they could feel the presence of these missing children, describing cold spots in certain classrooms and the sound of distant laughter echoing from empty hallways during recess. Mrs. Henderson found herself staying late each evening, poring over old yearbooks and school records in the dusty archive room in the basement. Something about this mystery gnawed at her, a persistent feeling that these names meant something, that they were connected to Jefferson Elementary in ways that went deeper than simple coincidence. She'd been at the school long enough to remember when they'd renovated the PA system 5 years ago, and again when they'd updated the wiring throughout the building just last month. Could there be some connection? The breakthrough came on a Thursday morning when Mrs. Henderson was searching through a box of old newspapers that had been donated to the school's historical collection. Her eyes fell upon a yellowed clipping from the Millbrook Daily Herald, dated October 15, 1984. The headline made her blood run cold: 5 children killed in school bus accident. With trembling hands, she read the article aloud to herself in the empty archive room. 5 students from Jefferson Elementary School were killed yesterday morning when their school bus skidded on wet leaves and crashed into Mill Creek. The victims, all between the ages of 8 and 10, have been identified as Tommy Richardson, age 9, Sarah Mills, age 10, Michael Chen, age 8, Lisa Rodriguez, age 9, and David Park, age 8. The accident occurred at approximately 8:47 a.m. as the bus was approaching the school for morning classes. The paper slipped from her hands and fluttered to the floor. 8:47 a.m. The exact time the phantom announcements had been occurring every morning. The exact same 5 names. The exact same ages as the current students who filled the hallways of Jefferson Elementary each day. Mrs. Henderson's discovery sent shockwaves through the school administration. Principal Morrison immediately called for a comprehensive investigation of the PA system, bringing in technicians and electrical engineers to examine every wire, every connection, every piece of equipment that could possibly explain the phenomenon. What they found defied easy explanation. The school's PA system was indeed malfunctioning, but not in any way that made conventional sense. Deep within the walls, behind layers of newer wiring installed during recent renovations, they discovered remnants of the original 1960s-era communication system. These old wires, which should have been completely disconnected and powerless, were somehow still carrying electrical current. More puzzling still, they appeared to be picking up and amplifying audio signals from an unknown source. The head technician, a gruff man named Frank Kowalski who'd been working with school electronics for over 20 years, scratched his head as he examined the tangle of old and new wiring. "I've never seen anything like this," he admitted to Principal Morrison. "These old wires should be completely dead. They're not connected to any power source, and they're not part of the current PA system. But somehow, they're active. They're broadcasting something." "Broadcasting what?" Morrison asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Old recordings, maybe? Audio that somehow got trapped in the wiring decades ago." Frank's explanation sounded uncertain even to his own ears. Sometimes electrical systems can act like primitive recording devices, especially in older buildings with a lot of electromagnetic interference. But for it to suddenly start playing back after all these years, that's not normal. The investigation revealed that the recent renovations had indeed disturbed the old wiring, possibly creating new connections or pathways that hadn't existed before. But this technical explanation did nothing to ease the growing unease that had settled over Jefferson Elementary like a thick fog. The story of the 5 children who had died in 1984 began to spread through the school community. Parents who had attended Jefferson Elementary themselves during the 1980s remembered the tragedy, remembered the grief that had engulfed the entire town. Some recalled that the accident had occurred on a day very much like the ones they were experiencing now, crisp autumn mornings when the leaves turned gold and red, when the air carried the promise of winter. Mrs. Patterson, now a grandmother whose own daughter attended Jefferson Elementary, had been a 4th grader when the accident happened. She remembered Tommy Richardson as a quiet boy who loved to draw, always carrying a small sketch pad in his backpack. Sarah Mills had been the class president, a bright and cheerful girl who organized bake sales and led the school's recycling program. Michael Chin was the fastest runner in 3rd grade, his sneakers always muddy from racing around the playground. Lisa Rodriguez had been learning to play the violin, her case a familiar sight in the hallways each Tuesday and Thursday. David Park was the class clown, always ready with a joke or a funny face to make his classmates laugh. They were just regular kids, Mrs. Patterson told her daughter one evening as they discussed the strange happenings at school. They had friends and dreams and favorite subjects just like you do. And then one morning, they were gone. The psychological impact of the daily phantom announcements began to weigh heavily on everyone at Jefferson Elementary. Some teachers reported feeling a profound sadness wash over them each morning at 8:47, as if the building itself was mourning. Students became quieter during morning routines, unconsciously holding their breath as they waited for the invisible children to be called. Principal Morrison found himself dreading each new day, knowing that his own voice would soon fill the hallways with names of children he'd never met, children who'd been gone for 4 years. The technical explanations provided by the electricians felt hollow and inadequate in the face of such profound sorrow. Whether the phenomenon was caused by old wiring or something more mysterious, it had awakened a grief that had been sleeping within the walls of Jefferson Elementary for 4 decades. The school's counselor, Miss Thompson, began holding special sessions for students who were struggling with the daily reminders of mortality that echoed through their hallways. She found that many children were grappling with questions about death and loss for the first time, trying to understand how 5 children just like them could be there one day and gone the next. "It's like they're still here," 8-year-old Emma whispered during one of these sessions. "Like they're trying to come to school but they can't find their classrooms." These innocent observations from the children often proved more insightful than the technical reports from the electrical contractors. The phantom announcements weren't just a malfunction, they were a daily reminder that Jefferson Elementary had once been home to 5 bright, laughing children whose voices had been silenced too soon. As October progressed and the leaves outside turned the same golden colors they had 4 years ago, the daily calls for Tommy, Sarah, Michael, Lisa, and David continued. The electrical contractors had tried everything they could think of, disconnecting old wiring, installing new systems, even completely rewiring the PA setup. Nothing worked. Each morning at 8:47, Principal Morrison's voice would echo through the building, calling 5 names that would never be answered. But something began to shift in the school's response to these phantom announcements. Instead of confusion and fear, a different emotion started to take hold: remembrance. Teachers began to use the daily mystery as a way to talk with their students about the importance of cherishing each day, about being kind to one another, about the preciousness of childhood itself. Mrs. Henderson started a small memorial project in her classroom, researching the 5 children and sharing their stories with her current students. She found old school photos, discovered that Tommy Richardson's artwork was still hanging in the school's main hallway, a watercolor painting of the playground that had somehow survived 4 decades of renovations and changes. Sarah Mills' name appeared on a plaque in the library, recognizing her contribution to the school's first Earth Day celebration. Michael Chen's record for the fastest lap around the school track still stood, written in fading ink on a chart in the gymnasium. Lisa Rodriguez had been featured in the school newspaper for her violin performance at the winter concert. David Park's joke collection, submitted to the school literary magazine, was discovered in the archives, still capable of making people smile after all these years. These discoveries transformed the daily phantom announcements from a source of fear into a celebration of 5 young lives that had touched Jefferson Elementary in ways that transcended death. The mysterious voices became a daily reminder not of loss, but of the lasting impact that each child can have on the world around them. The phenomenon continued through the rest of the school year, and then, as mysteriously as it had begun, it stopped. On the first day of the following school year, the PA system functioned normally. No phantom voices called out the names of children from decades past. The technical explanation was that the old wiring had finally been completely removed during summer renovations, but many at Jefferson Elementary preferred to believe that Tommy, Sarah, Michael, Lisa, and David had finally found peace, knowing that they had not been forgotten. The memorial project that Mrs. Henderson had started grew into a permanent installation in the school's main hallway, ensuring that future generations of Jefferson Elementary students would know the names and stories of the 5 children whose voices had echoed through their halls for one unforgettable year. In the end, the phantom announcements had taught an entire school community about the power of memory, the importance of honoring those who came before, and the understanding that some voices are too important to be silenced by time. Every morning at 8:47, teachers and students would pause for a moment of silence, not in fear, but in gratitude for the reminder that every child who walks through the doors of Jefferson Elementary is precious, important, and worthy of being remembered. The voices that never left had finally found their way home.